beginning of anything you try, little kids, not a good indicator of how good you can become. I am a prime example of somebody who was able to overcome a lack of aptitude, a serious lack of aptitude, with three things: practice, persistence, and the drive to never ever give up. It's the only thing that worked for me early in my career. And I saw it again in Gabby as she was trying to overcome this horrific brain injury, and how important it was to never ever give up and remain focused and committed and work really, really hard. It's also the only thing that ever worked for her. You know, I think for all of us, life is a set of challenges, right? Whether it's a personal challenge, like many of you have gone through, like my wife has gone through with her injury and rehabilitation. But there's also professional challenges that I think we all have, right? Life's a set of challenges. Starts out when you're really little. For me it was Mrs. Lawrence, my math teacher in the 3rd grade. We didn't get along too well. I really struggled with that. That was a challenge. Later on in my career, I had a really big challenge in 1990. The summer of 1990, Saddam Hussein invaded Kuwait. Now, I was a pilot of an A-6 Intruder all-weather ground attack airplane. I finally figured out how to land this thing on the aircraft carrier. And I was stationed in Japan. And that was in August of 1990 that he invaded Kuwait. And by Thanksgiving, we were on the aircraft carrier heading through the Indian Ocean and up into the Persian Gulf. We arrived there in the fall. And by mid-January of 1991, it was time for me to fly my first combat mission. I've been training for this my whole time in the Navy, since 1986. And I remember like yesterday, going up to the flight deck, arriving early. You don't want to be late for your first combat mission. And I get up to the airplane, myself and my bombardier navigator, a guy named Paul Fujimura, and they're loading lots of bombs onto our airplanes and all the other airplanes, bombs and missiles. I think we were carrying 6 1,000-pound bombs that night to drop on a hangar at Shaida Airfield in the city of Basra in southern Iraq. And my bombardier navigator, this guy named Paul, he was a graduate of the University of California at Berkeley. I think he's perhaps the only person from Berkeley ever to go in the military. But he was a good guy, knew what he was doing. We hopped into the airplane early, we turned the radios on. We hear another airplane, just like ours, another A-6 Intruder, just get shot down. They're looking for the crew members. A little while later, we launch off the front of the ship with all our weapons, and we head north. We rendezvous with an airborne tanker. We get a full tank of gas, disconnect, and then we head towards Iraq. And as soon as we get to the coast, I could see the anti-aircraft artillery coming up through the sky at us. And it looks like, well, at night, you can see the tracers, and as the guns get moved back and forth, it looks like a snake coming up through the sky at you. Now, Winston Churchill said about his experience, I think it was in the Boers War, he said, "There's nothing more exciting than being shot at and missed." Well, speaking from experience, the missed part is really important. Now, to get to our target that night, we had to go through this area that had all these Russian surface-to-air missiles. We had to go through these missile envelopes. And we make this left-hand turn. We're going west now. And the missile batteries were to our left, to our south. And I'm sitting on the left side of the airplane, and I keep looking over my left shoulder. And I got to tell you, one of the worst feelings I've ever had in my life is seeing that missile come up at our airplane, big bright dot moving at a very high rate of speed, and not moving forward or aft in the canopy. So it's staying in the same spot, and if something stays in the same spot like that, you know what it means? It means it's coming right at you. If it doesn't move, but it just gets bigger, it's coming right at you. And I say to Paul, I said, "Well, Paul, this is not good. We got a missile tracking on us." And his only response to me, most of that night was, okay, I'm tracking the target, meaning he is focused on his part of the job, the thing that he can control, which is operating the radar and keeping this cursor on the target 25 miles ahead of us. So a little while later I say, Paul, this is really bad, this thing's coming right at us. He goes, okay, I'm tracking the target. So he continues to maintain his focus on the stuff that he can control, and he's not worried about all the other stuff. A little while later I said, we're going to have to do a last ditch maneuver. He's like, okay. So I add full power, I roll upside down, I put the stick in my lap, we go down, missile goes over the top, it explodes. Big explosion, flash, airplane shakes a little bit. Get the airplane turned upright. All 4 hydraulic systems are still running and both engines are running, so it doesn't seem like we have any big holes in the airplane. And then we start heading back towards the target. And you know what's worse than seeing that first missile? It's seeing the second one. Now I am not having any fun at all. It's not how this was supposed to go. We go through the whole procedure again. And we went upside down. This time the missile goes over the top, doesn't explode. I must have learned something from the first time, I don't know what. A little while later, we get overhead the target. We're in our 30-degree dive. We're coming down through the clouds. The clouds over Iraq, by that point, were all orange because all the fires underneath from other airplanes that have been there before. And there's anti-aircraft artillery coming up, and we're coming down.